Hey everyone, Willie Clark here. Welcome to episode 25 of the Voices of Valyria podcast. As always, Timothy, how's it going?
I'm doing well. Played a lot of Overwatch. I'm a little bit addicted right now.
just a little bit?
Okay, I may have
Just
already
a
reached
little bit. Oh crap, I
level
probably
10.
can't sing.
Yeah, I think you just broke the waveform.
Well, it's not breaking the waveform. It's if we put it up on YouTube and they sample it and they match it to songs, then my life ends.
Yeah, the copyright claim.
Yeah.
Speaking of copyright claims, and this is just a brief aside, did you see the thing about Family Guy taking a YouTube video and then Fox copyright claiming the YouTube video?
I did not.
Yeah, so Family Guy took a clip of a YouTube video that was made by another YouTuber back in like 2002, and this Family Guy episode came out this year, and Fox then copyright claimed the video from back in 2002 that they took.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, the YouTube video was of a gameplay of an NBA All-Stars game from like the NES days. So it's like this weird Ouroboros of copyright claims. But this is Game of Thrones, the most pirated show ever, so copyright be damned.
Hey, Tim.
Yeah.
Have you held any doors recently?
I have held doors with my broken, crying body.
So this is... I know it's a little confusing for people. This is episode 25 of our podcast, but we're talking about episode 5, The Door, of Game of Thrones this season. And some big stuff this episode.
Which I was not expecting, considering that this is episode 5, and for the last few podcasts we have said, Game of Thrones is a very slow burn after they go like full bore with their first 2 episodes.
Yeah, this is actually, I just saw something online today. I think this is currently like the 3rd highest ranked episode of Thrones in its run.
Really?
Yeah, which I thought was kind of crazy. I'd also heard, and I have to double check this, but I'd also heard that previous to this episode, this season was the lowest reviewed season yet, which that actually didn't surprise me. A little bit, because I still think season 5 was probably worse. But yeah, The Door. Let's dive in.
Does it go through the door?
Let's
walk through that open door.
Let's walk through that open door. Anything in particular you want to start with, Tim?
I would like to give a shout out to Jay Bear. May he forever be the sad, lonely puppy in his wandering around the world for a cure.
Yeah. Let's break down Jorah. Let's talk about that scene with Dany. I think because that's a small scene, but I found it very interesting. I think I've made it quite clear my feelings on Dany as a whole. And just how much I'm completely over her character and her arc, and did not find her fire bullshit last week logically consistent, entertaining, or any of the above, which a lot of people seem to really like it. But I thought that this scene with Jorah, like, that was actually an emotional scene. I'm still a bit surprised, actually, how much those two were able to wring out of that scene. Considering this is something we've seen before, too. Like, this isn't the first time Jorah's left Dany. I mean, granted, it's leaving her under much, much different circumstances. But yeah, I was surprised how much emotion those two were able to wring out of that scene. I really was.
I honestly think it's because of the fact that Dany has sent him away like twice now. And
yeah.
It's now coming to terms with the fact that Dany probably in the back of her mind is like, Jorah's still loyal, but she has to send him away. But now this time that she sends him away, it's like, I might not see you again. Like, this time it might be forever, because she knew that he was loyal.
Yeah, and the other, I saw a couple people on the internet mention this too, that the other kind of wrinkle to their relationship is, unlike a lot of the characters on the show now, Jorah and Dany have been with each other since the very beginning.
Yeah.
These are two characters that we followed, from season 1. And Jorah, yeah, was Dany's only ally for a while before everything else happened, and now there's the romantic tinge of everything. But yeah, that was an emotional scene between the two of them.
It's
Um,
like seeing two best friends, because Jorah's not getting any, but like seeing two long-term friends all of a sudden have to part ways because one of them was diagnosed with super like
yeah,
cancer.
yeah, that's a really good comparison to that. And I mean, yeah, so she clearly sends Jorah off to find the cure. I have very little idea what they're going to do with Jorah's character at this point on. Um,
We might not see him.
some people have mentioned that Jorah could be, could just show up someplace in season 7 somewhere down the road and be like, "Oh, hey, here I am." I've
With like
seen,
one crusty arm.
yep, I've seen some speculation that he might seek out Melisandre and, Melisandre and Davos, because they have some experience, with Shireen, with the, curing the grayscale ish, I
Yeah,
guess.
Davos would be like, "I love Shireen," and Melisandre's like, "Yeah, we burned that girl."
You can't have a perfect track record.
This is true. This is very true.
But yeah, the other, and this theory I actually really like a lot. I saw some people speculating that Jorah may actually end up getting Victarion's arc, and that Jorah may drown, be saved by a red priestess, and get Victarion's flaming arm to replace his now dying arm, which would be interesting. I think is very not likely.
I mean, if that were to occur, I guess he would also have to take Victarion's role of heading back to Marine.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's possible, because Dany's probably going to head towards Marine first.
Yeah.
But before she goes back, so it's definitely. I don't want to completely write it out, but I think it's probably.
It's a bit of a stretch, but it's possible.
Yeah, bit of a stretch, but possible. I think is a good way to put it. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm curious to see what they do with Jorah. From this point out.
Well, speaking of Marine, though, we did have another scene there where Tyrion and Varys had a encounter with a Red Priestess.
Yes, they did. Yep. And this is again Tyrion's wheeling and dealing and scheming and plotting. And
Although it felt really awkward because it's kind of like when you do a school project with, a bunch of people that you don't quite know, and one of them gets up and kind of fucks it up. And you're like, "Can you please stop talking? I'm in the middle of like a business deal."
oh, with Varys,
Yeah, Varys kind of uncharacteristically kind of like,
snapped.
yeah, like I understand that he hates fanatics because of, one cut off his junk, but he acted really, really strongly against the Red Priestess, and then the Red Priestess is just like, "I know things about that time. I'm going to reveal facts that are going to make you nervous."
That was really interesting. Like the look on his face during that reveal was crazy. He was just what was he? Like terrified, almost.
Definitely taken aback, definitely frightened because no one knew full details.
No one else should know stuff like that. I mean, yeah, I did think it was a little odd. I mean, he obviously, yes, he hates fanatics because of his junk. I did kind of forget about that tie-in, but he's been working around religious fanatics for a while, so and Varys is not one to kind of lose his cool. So that was kind of, like you said, uncharacteristic of him.
I feel as if it was a point for them to be able to make an exposition point about like this priestess knows shit, and also to put Varys a little bit aback. But I feel as if there would have been a better way to do that without having to like make him extremely out there.
Well, I'm curious what they're doing with the Red Priestess in general. Obviously, this ties back, for those of you who don't remember, to the scene we saw last season with, and I'm actually, I think that might have been the same priestess, because she mentioned something to Tyrion about, you already know all this, you heard all this before.
Yeah,
So
didn't he see her like on the way to
on
Marine?
the way to Marine, yeah. And it's interesting because, you know, we've talked about this a lot on the podcast here, how the show has kind of underplayed the religious and fantastical and magical elements. I mean, even more recently, you know, we'll get to the King's Moot, but even more recently, you know, with the lack of the dragon horn, which I never thought we were going to see the dragon horn, but anyways, so yeah, I'm very curious now that they're starting to ramp up the Red Priestess thing. I mean, this is something that's definitely in the backgrounds throughout, you know, the most recent two books, you know, especially with, yeah, there's a very large community of religious people who are flocking behind Dany, who see her as, you know, the fulfillment of this prophecy. And even the prophecy the show has started to name and started to hint at. Melisandre keeps saying the prince who is promised. Now she's saying Jon's the prince who is promised. They are refusing to, you know, to actually refer to her by name. But now this Red Priestess is saying the same thing about Dany. So I'm not sure if she's there to.
I think we're going to have a religious revival to the series.
I'm not sure if it's a religious revival. I'm not sure if she's there just to kind of provide counterbalance to Melisandre. That, you know, okay, like Melisandre, with the exception of the brief mention of Thoros, you know, and all that we saw, Melisandre is pretty much our only window into, you know, into the Lord of Light. So is it to provide some balance to that and say that, okay, Melisandre's fucked up, but, you know, now these people think that it's really Dany, that Dany's the person that we should be rallying behind, you know, as the princess, I should say, who was promised. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm curious what they're doing there. I mean, Marine, I think, is infinitely better with Tyrion in charge than with Dany. I was actually just talking to Rye about this, that I think that, unfortunately, I do think that Dany's going to come in and throw a giant hissy fit with what Tyrion's done. I don't think she's going to be happy about the negotiations with the masters of of the other cities. I think that's too smart and politically savvy of a move for Dany to understand. And because right now she's again proven that the only language she speaks is dragon. She only speaks burning things down with fire.
She speaks the language of conquerors. She doesn't speak the language of the people.
Yep. And that's going to be tricky. And so, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where Marine continues to develop. It's not quite stalling at this point for me, but I do think Marine's had some weak scenes. I mean, Marine is hands down probably one of the worst plots of the book. I think that goes. I think most people would agree with that.
It's a very difficult.
It's difficult. It's boring. I mean, there's a lot more moving pieces in it in the book than the show, and
the point of it is supposed to exemplify like Dany's ability to lead, which it just proves that.
Well, her inability to lead, yeah. If anything, Marine's supposed to prove her inability to lead, and yeah. So I don't know what we'll see from her on this point. You know, there have been rumors of seeing her film in locations in Westeros this season. So it's possible she could land there in the season finale. You know, by the season finale. But those are just rumors. Who the fuck knows? But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I think from here, you know, the only real scene we got from Dany this week was her and Jorah, and I you know, it's a fool's game to predict what Jorah is going to be doing. But from here, Dany's got an army. You know, does she go back to Marine? I think she's going to go back to Marine first, because she's not going to go to Westeros without her dragons.
Oh, I definitely think she's going to go to Marine first, see what the things that Tyrion did, and then at the same time, Mr. Euron Greyjoy is going to arrive with his ships like, hey, you want to ride?
Yep. And so that's a good point. Let's talk about Pike. So we finally got the King's Moot. The show refused to call it a Queen's Moot, you know, just to twist that knife in a little more to book readers.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts? Because I think Pike is very interesting. Pike is actually one of, if not my favorite arcs
I enjoy
from the book.
I enjoy it from the book, and here there's a lot less people vying for the Salt Throne.
Mm-hmm.
But I enjoy the fact that Yara, I mean, no, it's Yara in this TV series, right? Yeah.
Yes, because it's Osha in the books. Yeah.
See, when they change the name, it still confuses me.
It's still fucking confusing. Yeah, they changed. It's pretty widely believed they changed it to avoid confusion with Osha.
Yeah. I mean, it just
Or it's
confuses me.
Asha. Ah, fuck. I don't.
Asha
Whatever.
and Osha.
Yeah, exactly.
One's
So.
a protection service for safety in all your public buildings. OSHA.
Yeah, pretty much.
But Yara goes up to become queen, and then Theon gives his allegiance to Yara, and that's sweet. And then it was weird because it kind of felt like an allegory to the 2016 election because Yara says that what she's going to do, how she's going to make the Iron Islands great again. And then Euron Greyjoy comes in and is just like, I'm going to talk about my dick, and then I'm going to talk about how he doesn't have a dick, and then I'm going to talk about how she's a woman, and I'm going to win the election. Haha!
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I do think that Thrones has thrown in a lot of political commentary, especially these past few seasons. And I mean, that's not any different than the books. I think there's a lot of social, economical, historical, political, anything, commentary throughout Game of Thrones. I mean, there's a lot of, talk about imperialism and, who owns the land, which people were there first, stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of torn on the Pike stuff at the moment. I think I wanna hold out hope for a little bit. I was a little surprised. I did not think that, given how much they were changing Pike, and obviously having Theon there is a big change because Theon wasn't there for the King's Moot.
Correct.
The King's Moot / Queen's Moot in the books. So having Theon there is obviously a big change. It almost looks like they're they're trying to run a redemption arc for Theon. But yeah, I'm trying to remain positive on Pike because here's what I'm afraid of is I'm afraid that Pike this season is going to become Dorne of last season. And I mean, I've talked about this a lot. I don't want to talk about it too much more because I actually have an article coming out about it. About Dorne and everything that went wrong with Dorne. But I do think that Pike is kind of slotted in as the replacement for Dorne this season. And because of that, I think there's going to be a lot of comparisons because it's a land we haven't seen that much of that people really don't care about that much because I don't think people care about Theon. I don't think people care about his sister. And so the Iron Islands have always kind of been this very, very tertiary thing, and they become very important in books 4 and 5. And again, there's a lot of fucking parallels to Dorne. But I'm hoping that one of those parallels to Dorne is not the show really fucks it up. I'm hoping that doesn't happen, and I don't know. It's too early to tell. Thinning the brothers down is on one hand worrisome, but isn't necessarily a bad sign. I don't like how unpirate-like Euron is. I'm not entirely believing his casting, so I'm a little suspicious on him. I mean, he had a fucking eye patch for crying out loud.
Which played a major part into one of Dany's visions, where a large tentacled shadow with a eye patch, like one eye, was going to be the most fearsome of dangers in her life. And the thing is, I was hopeful for Euron because we had that scene where he's swaying on the bridge and he seemed like he could be an imposing villainous like figure.
Mm-hmm.
And then this episode I'm just like, he's just kind of a dick.
Well, and he's just kind of a dude. Like, he doesn't have the gravitas of a pirate. And I mean, I think what they're doing, honestly, is I think the issue here is they're combining Euron and Victorian into one character, and I think that's kind of what they said their goal of it was. Obviously, he's keeping Euron's name. I was also surprised how blatantly he was just like, yeah, I fucking killed the king. Yeah. That was kind of surprising to me, considering that's something that's still up in the air in the books. I mean, it's long thought it was him. But the timeline of some of this stuff is also weird. We still don't know who burnt all the ships in Marine, and it's pretty much thought that was Victorian in the books, that it was his fleet coming into Marine. I've seen some speculation that Yara and Theon could take Victarion's arc, that they could, rush to try to get to Marine before Euron does. Euron, obviously in the books, has a much better argument for his ability to be able to control Dany and the dragons because he has a dragon horn. And, the show's replacing that with his dick. Though I do seem to recall that Euron, I think, talked about his dick and fucking Dany in the King's Moot.
He did.
Yeah, I seem to recall that was still part of it. They're just removing the dragon horns, which is a shame because I think the horns are cool. I mean, I
think the horn was probably the most legitimate part of his argument in the books, and then in this, without the horn, you would have to just believe that the Iron Islanders were just you know what, he talked about his penis enough that I'm okay with this guy as being our king.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting how they presented it, because I actually, my reading of it, I mean, yes, was some of that, but my reading of it was more that the Iron Islanders just wouldn't accept a queen. And I think that's possible. And I'm actually trying to remember exactly how the Queen's Moot played out. Because Yara didn't get it in the books either, but it played out much differently. And I don't remember... Shit. I'm trying to remember, and I can't remember exactly how things played out. But there was a lot more involved. There were a lot more houses. There was a lot more political stuff going on. Which, again, trimming that stuff down isn't by itself necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, so I'm curious. I was very surprised with like I said, with him being like, yep, we're just going to go get Dany. Because I figured with all the changes to Pike that was going to be another change. And now he has to build ships because all his ships are gone. But I think, I mean, I don't know. The way things are moving, we could see him meeting up with Dany awfully quick.
I think that's what the point is, to bring Dany to across the shore is probably, somebody's going to get her across, somebody with ships, and it's going to be an Iron Islander.
Yeah.
Probably Euron, with all likelihood. I would wager it would be him. And for Theon and Yara at this point, I don't know what their arc is going to be like other than running away and then trying to find a way to take back the Iron Islands. Or put their lot in with somebody who would help them take back the Iron Islands.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they're doing with them. I mean, at this point in the books, Theon is still with Ramsay, I believe. Actually, no.
I think he's wandering to the Wall.
No, because I think I'd have to double check this. I don't really give a fuck about Theon.
Wasn't he
he was? I believe
stopped by Stannis' men.
No, oh no! Yes, you're right. Theon was captured by Stannis' men because the last, one of the preview chapters I think of Winds of Winter is Theon's point of view talking about Stannis' camp. Actually. I believe you're right about that. So Theon's been captured by Stannis. Yeah, I don't know. I've never given a fuck about Theon. I mean, the show's gonna have some justifying to do because they've invested a lot in that fucking character.
I think the Theon that we know would probably most likely find a way to get back to the north, to Sansa and possibly Jon with Yara, and be like, all right, we lost the Iron Islands. Because where else are they going to go? They have no allies anywhere else.
It's possible. I mean, I was kind of thinking along those same lines as well, that we could see them do something like that. I'm not 100% positive though. I think, I mean, maybe the one thing that would be kind of cool would be to see them do like ship battles between them and Victarion, or them and Euron on the way to Marine.
That would be fun.
That would make me quite happy. Just do like a Pirates of the Caribbean like couple episode arc. Just do all Pike. But yeah, so I'm hoping, and I know people who listen to this podcast, listeners. If you listened last year, you were like, man, Willie's really hyping up Dorne, and it fucking sucked dick. So I don't want to hype up Pike and then have it fucking suck dick again. So hopefully Pike will be good. And like I said, I'm cautious. I'm cautiously optimistic still. I have some reservations, but I don't think we've seen enough of it to really see how this tale goes. I mean, I hope Pike doesn't become a plot point that its sole existence is to to be the answer to all of Dany's problems and just ferry her across the water. I mean, there's some people who do think that Euron could take Quentin's place, and Euron could come try to wed Dany and then be eaten by dragons, which is possible. That's possible, and then maybe Theon and Yara show up and ferry her across. I don't know. I don't know at this point.
There are way too many variables at this point. There's a lot of pieces at play, but none of them are really going in any direction that we can foresee.
No, not quite yet. So, want to jump to Bravos?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, let's talk about Arya. And this scene I think is interesting for a lot of reasons. Again, with Arya, I've complained for a while that Arya's arc, I'm kind of over it. But I want to use this scene to talk about something interesting that I felt with this season as a whole. And I felt like every single episode this season, at least almost everyone, has had one really long scene that was just flat out bad. And I honestly don't remember that ever being a problem Thrones has had before. There's definitely been episodes that weren't as great, that weren't as climactic, or weren't as exciting. But I don't really remember many that had scenes that were just flat out bad. And, this season we've got Tyrion's scene, with him trying to come up with a drinking game to play, which was awful. We also got this scene, which was a very, very long scene with Arya watching a play, retelling us things we've seen already.
Isn't she getting a bit of news that she wasn't aware about before, though?
With what?
Okay, wait. It had her father being executed, and then Joffrey became king. I guess not. Never mind.
No, it's all stuff she knew before.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a lot of discussion around this scene. The interesting thing, I think, is that, I mean, obviously, if you boil it down, the point of this scene was to piss Arya off.
Yeah.
And we don't need the scene. The scene doesn't need to be that long to do that. It was just a very, very long scene. And like I said, on the one hand, I'm kind of torn about it because I think the idea of showing us what the common people think, is interesting. Because that's not a point of view that's really, I mean, almost all of our narrators, almost all of our characters are highborn. And, we start to get some of this with the King's Landing plot, which the show hasn't quite dug into that much, but, the rise of the Sparrows is really a rise of, quote unquote, the common person. It's everyone else getting fed up with the Game of Thrones going on above their heads. And so, from that level, it is kind of cool. I mean, obviously, it's interesting, too, because this play kind of paints Ned as an idiot, and, Tyrion as evil, and Joffrey as a good person. So, from that kind of glimpse into how stuff gets translated across the sea, also interesting. But I just thought it was a really long, not great scene. Like, it felt odd. It felt like an odd scene in the World of Thrones.
Yeah, it just kind of felt like there's a scene in a cartoon that that actually has a play that retells the entire story, and it comes towards the very end, the series finale of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And it's called the Ember Island Players, and that was a good example of what a retelling of a story via a play should be. It lampoons itself, and it highlights some some tropes of the series and some things, but this just kind of was there to exist. And if it was meant to piss off Arya, it didn't really serve to do anything to change her mind about her mission or change her mind about anything. And it doesn't seem like unless it was the faceless men who sent her there to test her willingness to be no one.
Oh, I mean, I absolutely kind of think that's what it was. I almost 100% think it was a test by the Faceless Men. My problem is, and I've seen some discussion about this as well. My problem with Arya is kind of similar to my problem with the High Sparrow, I think, at this point. Is they're spending all this time. I mean, this is Arya's second or third season in Bravos now. Second. I think this is her second. So they're spending all this time with Arya and Bravos. And it's all boiling down to, is she going to be able to stop being Arya Stark? And we see her do it, and then we see her being unable to do it. And then we see her do it, and we see her being unable to do it. And, it's something like this that the show's trying to, force down your throat, the same way they're trying to convince you that the High Sparrow is a good guy and he's not up to something. But then, I don't know, it wouldn't surprise me if Arya fucks up again. This plot isn't all that different than the same exact plot she went through last season, in terms of her being, unable to give up being who she is. And I mean, obviously we haven't seen the end result of that, and maybe she is going to become nobody and will be willing to actually finally give up her past. And that's fine, and that's good. But if that's the case, why is it taking so long?
I honestly don't think there's any scenario where she can give up her past, because I
think there's a lot of people who feel that way. Yeah,
it's just it's not even context clues at this point. It's just that they hem and haw over it so much that it's then she's not going to. If she was to become nobody, why would we follow nobody?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's definitely going to be part of it. Interesting. I don't know, Arya, but I mean, again, do you feel similarly, Tim, that I feel like last episode we had the scene with Jon and Sansa, which I didn't think it felt like a Game of Thrones scene. It felt almost like a sitcom. It was tonally, I didn't think it fit in. And so I think just every episode this season has had one scene that was not quite cringe-worthy, but just wasn't good for Thrones. And I think this was that scene. That scene was that for this episode.
They feel like filler scenes to me. It's just they aren't meant to drive the plot. They aren't meant to give any sort of exposition. They aren't even meant to give any new character traits. They're mostly just there to exist to fill up time.
Yeah, which is it's unfortunate with all the stuff that they could be doing that the show still feels like they have to do that. I mean, I do think the show feels a certain amount of pressure to make sure that its key players are around as much as possible.
Oh, absolutely.
And that, that's fine. That's a logistic thing. That's a logistics thing you don't have to worry about when writing a book. But I don't know. It's frustrating, I think, for everyone, I would imagine, when we have scenes like that, and then there's other scenes that could have been twice as long. We could have spent a lot more time with Pike, and instead, because it's Arya, we're going to spend, 20 fucking... It wasn't 20 minutes, but it sure felt like 20 minutes.
I think that's another fault of not planning ahead of time with the show, because if they spent more time making Pike interesting, or even Dorne interesting, prior to the season, in some facet, then people would be consistently interested into it, and then they would feel like there's value into expending time and money into those scenes.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if that battle was almost lost before it begun, because no matter what Dorne was like, because it was coming in so late, people were never going to appreciate it the same. And I mean, I do think that's kind of I think that's kind of their reaction that people had to Dorne in the books originally. I mean, I can't speak too much from that, but just from everyone that had read the books before I read them, told me books 4 and 5 suck. Dorne, he throws in a whole bunch of new stuff. There's all this, he throws in all these new plots. So I don't know. Maybe they were doomed for the start, but hopefully there's hope for Pike.
Hopefully, we can only hope for Pike.
We can only hope. But okay, I wanna save the big stuff for last. So who else? Are we forgetting anyone else? Oh yeah, we are the North. With Sansa and Littlefinger.
Yeah, that was awkward.
Yep. Yeah. I opened with this. Sansa's coming into her own. She's sending Brienne off on to go do things. Well, Sansa, sure, she'll be safe by herself. I mean, I don't think Sansa has much to worry about with Jon and everything there. And
I'm more worried that Brienne's going to end up there, and that Blackfish did not actually take River Run, and that this was all a lie.
Yeah, that's possible. I think it's interesting actually because didn't we just talk about this last week? How the show hasn't done like anything with the Riverlands at all, and here it is in a mention, and yeah, it's odd. I mean, is she making a mistake trusting Littlefinger? What's going on? I mean, Littlefinger, I don't know. I didn't think Littlefinger was super convincing in that scene, and I'm not sure if he wasn't supposed to be. If that was kind of the point, that he wasn't supposed to be convincing. I'm not really sure. Because that is something that I think we talked about on the podcast last year, is, did Littlefinger know about Ramsay? And I think Sansa kind of hit the nail on the head. If you did, you're awful. If you didn't, you're stupid. And I think I'm kind of glad the show came right out on that, because that's exactly what it was. There's no way Littlefinger didn't know about Ramsay. Everyone, Littlefinger knows about everybody. So yeah, I mean, I think the North is just stalling to get to the Battle of Winterfell. I think that, I mean, we mentioned this last week. I think that's going to be the big battle for episode 9. And I think the show is just stalling to get there. And it will get there eventually.
Very slowly, like a glacial winter.
Yeah, like a glacial winter.
Other than that, the Sansa Littlefinger section was just basically, Sansa trying to assert control over her life, and over a person who she thought she could trust, and then immediately start her own conniving schemes up in the North by lying to Jon about where she got the information.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably going to be important, but I feel like it's only, they're only doing it because it's going to be important. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I feel like the only reason she lied was because that's going to become a thing. There's no reason for her to lie to Jon. At all. At all. There's no reason for her to lie to Jon. So I don't know.
I did note one thing though, when I was taking notice of who's going to be north in case the White Walkers show up. And currently we have 2 Valyrian steel blades up north. We have Ice. Wait, is that the name of Jon's? No. What's the name of the sword that Jon has? Longclaw. Yeah, Ice was the other thing. Was Ned Stark's sword. And then we have Oathkeeper.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
forged from ice, actually.
Forged from ice, yeah. Which actually made me feel a little bit comfortable if Brienne actually makes it to Winterfell with the rest of the team. It's just well, part of ice got home.
That's true.
Yeah, it'd be sweet.
A little part of it, but nonetheless.
I don't think we're going to get Widow's Wail back to the north.
No, probably not. But okay, are you ready for
the big chunk of cookie?
The big chunk, yeah, the big chunk of cookie.
I'm holding the door for you, man.
It's gonna be a thing forever now. The internet's had so much fun with it.
I know, 20 years from now, some lady is going to say, "Hey, can you hold the door for me?" And you're just like,
hold door. And it's funny actually. I don't know if you saw this. I saw this on the Song of Ice and Fire Reddit actually. Apparently, someone dug up this story that someone posted like a few years back. That they were like, oh, like I shared an elevator with Martin at a convention. And he said that Martin had mentioned somewhere that he wanted to be like an elevator repair person or something at one point in his life. And the guy said, hey, I thought about what you said with that, and I think that Hodor is short for hold the door. And Martin was like, oh, like, you don't know how close you actually are or something. And I mean, shit like this comes out, all the time, and no one believes it. But now someone went back and dug it up and was like, hey, this person was actually fucking right. Which is kind of crazy. I mean, of course someone was right. There's so many theories for all this stuff.
I mean, the only time I was ever right on the internet was that Korra from Legend of Korra was going to end up in a lesbian relationship with Asami. But, I call it credit for that one. That was on my Reddit.
Nice.
But
Nice.
I did see that post, but I also saw another subreddit that highlighted a subreddit post from like ages ago, where the person joked that, what if Hodor like was trying to say, someone for God's sake, just hold the door for me. Just hold the door for me. I have these things. Hold the fucking door for me. And he just repeated it so often that Hodor was all that he could say afterwards. And it was just a joke. Mm-hmm. But years later, it's just like, oh.
Here we go. Here we are. So I want to get my disappointments with this scene out of the way first.
Okay.
My disappointments with this scene are Solo and Paramount that we didn't get Tower of Joy this episode, because I really thought that we were going to. And now I'm actually wondering, with the Raven dead, if we will get Tower of Joy at all this season.
Oh, I think we will.
I don't know. My gut tells me that scene that he pulled us out of will happen in the next book and will reveal R plus L equals J, but that Martin begged them to wait and reveal that next season. That's my thought.
My gut is that Bran is going to be stuck dreaming after being pulled from the tree after the Raven's gone. And that he's going to be wandering through time as Mira pulls him through the winter.
Interesting. Well, so there's a lot of stuff to break down. So we'll quickly go through what happened.
Yeah.
Bran somehow doesn't make any sense. We don't know if he warped through time or space. Runs into the Night King in a vision by himself, and the Night King touches him and then finds Bran and then wants to kill Bran. There's so much about this scene that we don't know. We don't know why the Night King gives a fuck about Bran. We don't know why he wants to kill the One-Eyed Raven or Bran. He comes in, Mira shatters. I actually just read a really good theory. Mira shatters one of the Night King's cronies in the same way that Dragonglass does. And now the question is, have you ever heard of the R plus L equals JM theory?
Yes. That
Mira and John are twin brothers, separated,
Twin brother sister.
Yeah, brother sister. Separated, aka, Luke and Leia. I had never heard of that theory before, and I saw a couple people theorizing that because she killed a White Walker, that maybe she is actually John's secret sister, and they do look alike. It's possible.
They are described alike in the books, and the only two people at the Tower of Joy at the time were Howland Reed and Ned Stark, and if both of them took a
one
daughter,
of the kids, that would have worked.
Could you imagine if Ned Stark came home with two kids? Catelyn would have had a fit.
Oh yeah, Catelyn would have had a conniption fit.
Oh yeah, that's exactly why probably at the Tower of Joy, Ned's like, "Hey, Helen, want to do me a solid?
Let's each take one." Yeah, let's each take one.
It's like, all right, can I have the boy? No, I'm taking the boy. Catelyn would be okay with the boy.
But so we'll see. So I'm not positive about that. But so and this is where things get interesting: is they're trying to escape, and Bran is stuck in a vision in the past, seeing Hodor. And now here's where things get tricky, because no one's really 100% clear on what happens here. And I think we probably won't get clarity on it until the book actually comes out. I've been bickering with a few people on this. Somehow, through messing around with space and time, Bran creates Hodor. and fries his poor little brain.
The
Hodor then gives his life holding the door for Bran and Mira to escape. This is tragic on so many levels. I think this whole sequence, this ending, is the most intense Thrones has been probably this season, if not, like this was like edge of your seat entertainment. Like, they did a really good job with these ending sequences.
I've made a mention of this before, but the White Walkers, especially the Whites, are way scarier than all the seasons of The Walking Dead combined.
Let me chew on that. But I do think it was a phenomenally done job. I also want to point out the director of this episode has never directed Thrones before. As some people have pointed out, he was a big Lost director, and he directed episodes apparently with a lot of crazy, kooky Lost stuff, which makes sense given he did crazy, kooky time travel stuff here too. But yeah, so the part I'm really interested on, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, Tim, is how did Bran create Hodor?
So this is something that I discussed with coworkers earlier today, because I get asked a lot of Thrones questions at work, and as you do when you're a popular Thrones podcaster.
When you're super popular, when you run the best Thrones podcast of all time. Yeah,
bingo.
It happens.
Yeah, people see you down the street like, hey, I have some questions about Thrones. I'm like, yeah, I'll give you some info. But the thing that I kind of said is that when the previous episode, the Three-Eyed Raven said, when Bran interacted with the past and said, Father, and, Ned turned around, and Bran's like, he heard me. And then the Three-Eyed Raven's like, the past is, what happened in the past already happened. Like, the ink is already dry. Nothing can be undone. And the best way to kind of understand what just happened to Hodor, because a lot of news articles have said, well, clearly Bran broke that rule because clearly he did change the past. Bran didn't change the past. Whatever Bran will do has already happened.
Yeah.
Everything that he has done in the past has occurred and will occur. And what he ended up doing was trying to connect through Hodor's past to his future self, in a way, psychically linking those 2 points in time so that old Hodor and young Hodor are being commanded and are connected by past the future, and just fries his brain.
Yeah. So here's my thought, and there's one other point I want to mention too. So don't let me forget to bring up the theory that Bran is in fact the Raven, because that's something I keep hearing people bring up too. So here's my interpretation of what happened: is I feel that Bran was kind of in two places at the same time, I think, and that he tried to warg into current Hodor in the present and did, and then also warged into past Hodor. And since he warged into past Hodor, he fried Hodor's brain. The thing I can't figure out is how Hodor heard the hold the door part and how that traveled back in time.
Well, he is the funnel. Like, Bran hears Mira, and Mira's words echo through Bran. And then when Bran
Bran's in two places at the same time, essentially.
He is acting, like, in real time. He is both in the present, his body's in the present. All his body reacts to everything that occurs in the present. That's why the Three-Eyed Raven dies in the present. Mm-hmm. And also affects, like, where he is in the past. So Bran acts as a tunnel between the present and the past, and Mira's words echo through Bran into the world that he's at as he's warging into Hodor, and then those words are stuck in him.
Okay, so here's the thought. Hodor becomes Hodor because Bran warged into him in the past. That's your interpretation, correct?
My theory is that you are right, that he warged into present day Hodor. Because that's the one he can control.
That's the one he can control, yeah.
But because he's trying to control Hodor while he's using green sight to be in the past,
he accidentally wargs into young Hodor too.
Exactly.
Yeah. So he's in two places at the same time and wargs into two places at the same time. Yeah, that's my thought, is that I think that Bran did this. I mean, there's some people seem to think that it was just like Hodor's like time stream flowing backwards. That's what Rye keeps arguing with me about. And I was like, no, I very much think this was Bran's doing. Like, I think this was Bran's doing. I mean, the question is, and I think this is questions for both interpretations, is did Hodor see his own death? Some people seem to think that that's what happened, and that's why Hodor went crazy, is that young Hodor, through Bran, saw himself die. And some people even take it as far as to think that Hodor knows his whole life, his only purpose is to help Bran escape. And that's the reason he's fried. I don't buy into that much.
I'm not a huge fan of that theory because that was
No.
something that was supposed. If anything, I would say that the fact that he was psychic, like if you were to say that there's a psychic link between past Hodor and future Hodor through Bran, and the act of dying in the future ends up frying the present, like the past Hodor, that's something that I could say is like, some sort of resonance between the two people. I much more think that it is definitely the command and like the warg between two times.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, and my thing is, I don't even think it's the warging between two times has anything to do with it. I think it's the fact that, the only reason that Bran can warg into Hodor in the present is because Hodor is already operating on a lower level of mental activity. That's the reason Bran can warg into animals, and it's fine. It's said, I'm pretty sure, that Bran can't warg into regular humans, without fucking them up. So I think that Bran tries to warg, Bran's in two places at once, and he hears Mira say, warg into Hodor. So his mind wargs into current Hodor, and the mind of his that's in the past wargs into past Hodor. And that's what fries him, because past Hodor's a kid and can't handle being warged into.
I don't think he would have been able to handle being warged into at any point in his life.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Is not that he's a kid. I'm saying that any normal, like if Bran tries to warg into any normal person, he would fry their brain. Is what I'm saying. And so he fried Hodor's brain, and then somehow the door thing came through because Bran's in two places at once. Yeah. It's kind of confusing. I mean, this makes Hodor a very tragic character.
Oh, because his entire purpose in life is to hold one door.
Yeah, and
he never had a choice on the matter because what Bran did was going to happen.
And I'm gonna be a little honest here. I don't know, was his sacrifice in vain? I'm still not sure how the fuck they got away, considering that place was overrun with whites.
Honestly, the whites were apparently just inside. They stopped being on top of the hill, and they got away somehow. But Bran's still marked by the Ice King. Yeah,
which is another thing that's not really explained. It doesn't really make any sense, but I guess we'll find out more about that next episode.
I mean, now that we found out that the White Walkers were created as biological weapons.
Oh god, we haven't even talked about that.
Oh yeah. That the White Walkers were created as biological weapons against the first men in order for the children of the forest to survive. That's a lot
crazy.
Of people.
Also, where the fuck did all those children come from? I definitely thought we only had one.
We only had one, and then they just showed up. I don't know where they came from, but they showed up, and I'm pretty sure they're extinct now.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the other thing.
I'm pretty sure that, in one night, Bran has ended an entire species, has killed one of the greatest wizards of Westeros, and almost killed, Mira, but definitely killed one of the nicest people in Westeros.
Yeah. So there's two other theories here I want to talk about. One, which is kind of interesting, and that I think I can get behind, is that Bran is actually the three-eyed raven, and that somehow Bran in the future sends himself into the past and gets stuck to wait for himself. Somehow. That part's a little wibbly wobbly. But some timey-wimey. But it's interesting because the Raven, specifically says, now it's your turn to become me. He doesn't say, it's your turn to become, the one-eyed raven. It's your turn, The books, I'm pretty sure, are pretty clear that it's, it's Bloodfire. Or no, fuck, who is it? They do name him
Somebody named Bloodraven.
Bloodraven. Yeah, Bloodraven. But I don't know. I mean, I think that's interesting, and I think that's an interesting thought that this could be Bran setting this whole thing up.
Honestly, one of my thoughts immediately that upon the concept of whatever has happened, the ink is already dried, and Hodor, like, when they first said that, I was like, yeah, whatever happened in the past happened in the past. Like, he can, like, make whispers, but that's about it. But this Hodor scene changes that for me, because I'm like, whatever Bran has done and will do will happen. So anytime that anybody in Westeros has heard a whisper or something, it could have been him.
Yep.
Including the moment that Jaime Lannister and Cersei were fucking in a tower, and Jaime just happens to turn around for no apparent goddamn reason to push the kid off the window. Which sets Bran's entire life story into motion.
So does Bran cripple himself
to send him north of the wall?
Hot damn.
There's a lot of things that can be done with this.
There is, and this is what I think is the most interesting. I mean, obviously, Bran, I think, is going to struggle with having killed Hodor.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that's something we're going to see. My favorite theory about all this stuff, though, is Mad King Aerys. And yes, there's a lot of stuff given in the books that the reason he's crazy is from inbreeding, and, that the Targaryens kind of have a 50-50 shot of being crazy or normal. And I think we're going to find out soon that Dany's actually the crazy one. It wasn't Viserion. But Mad King Aerys, continually driven crazy by voices he claims he was hearing. I think that was Bran.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen a lot of talk about this. I think that's a great twist. I think that's a really smart play. I think that could be Bran. I think that it could have been Bran.
Could you imagine that the entire purpose of, like, the Three-Eyed Raven was not to just be a man in the tree, but to set up things in order to stop the next, 1,000-year winter?
I think that's possible, yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of string pulling he was doing in the background.
Oh, yeah, and then you have, like, pretty much, like, as I said, like, anything that happened in the past, any whispers, any sort of, like, thing you cannot explain could be already have happened.
Yep.
We're using a lot of different participles today.
Yeah, and I think Eric mentioned this to me, and I think we might have a third guest next week. Actually, this is something we've been working on for this season, and actually Eric is the one who got me into Game of Thrones, so it's kind of appropriate. But I was talking to Eric about this, and he said that at the end, the like Q&A, the short little behind the scenes they do at the end of the episode now. That they mentioned that as Bloodraven was dying, all of his knowledge transferred to Bran. So Bran now knows everything that the One-Eyed Raven knew, which is interesting. And that he just has to access it. Which means that, we still could get R+L=J. We still could get a lot of stuff out of Bran. But yeah, there's a lot of big stuff in there with Hodor, with the children creating the others.
We got a lot of just lore building, as well as a lot of just revelations and future possibilities, because honestly Bran's powers just become a little bit more ridiculous every time that we get to experience them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so much more that can happen now, and his purpose from now on, he definitely won't be king of Westeros, but his role in the time to come will become one of the most instrumental parts of what happens in the series, because he is a wizard essentially.
I mean, and he can control like anything. Oh yeah. I mean, I do hate time travel as a plot device, but I think the way Martin's doing it, and it's actually interesting, is Martin was originally a sci-fi writer. And the series is getting more and more sci-fi the longer it goes on. But anyways, I do think that as long as the time travel is consistent and that all of these things have already happened, that Bran can't change them because he's already done them, I'm okay with it then. I'm okay with it existing within this universe
version.
As that. Yep.
Yeah, I like that version of time travel a lot.
Yep, and so that works with Aerys, that works with all of this stuff because Bran's done it already. It's already happened and it's set.
And they're all set pieces in order to create a future that is able to withstand the walkers
Yep. And I mean, there's been a lot of discussion, just about, that, why did the One-Eyed Raven have Bran stuck in a scene with Winterfell that wasn't important at all while this escape was happening? Well, because he knew the only way he could escape was with Hodor. He kind of gets this big picture thing. And hopefully we get some more big picture stuff out of Bran. I really want R plus L equals J this season. If you can't tell, I really fucking want it.
I would like a lot of things out of Bran, like, a cure for the White Walker disease, who is the Night's King, so much more. Because we still don't know much. Like, we know the White Walkers were made. We don't know if the first one was the Night's King. We know what the legend of the Night's King is from the books. There's a lot still mysterious north of the Wall.
Yeah, no, there really is. And yeah, I was actually kind of surprised that this happened already. That we got this much movement out of Bran's plot. It's halfway through the season, but yeah, I was surprised we got this so early. It's shocked me.
Yeah, I'm thrilled actually with it.
Nice. So anything else? We've passed an hour, so this is the point where people want to go back to their Snapchats and their Instagrams and whatever else the kids use these days.
Well, loyal audience, I have one thing to say to you. When you go out tomorrow after you listen to this podcast, I want you to go and hold the door for someone.
Hold the door. 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 Oh, Hodor.
Rest in peace, Hodor. We'll miss you.
Rest in peace, Hodor. Anyways, thank you everyone for listening. This has been Voices of Valyria. We will be back next week. Have a good week. Peace.
Ciao.